Joshua 1 verse 12 says, "And to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, Joshua spoke, saying, Remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, The Lord your God has given you rest and is giving you this land." And today we're going to talk about the curious case of these 2.5 tribes, okay? The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the tribe of Manasseh. But to kind of understand what they did, to kind of put it in perspective, I'm going to tell you a story. It was actually a case study that was done many years ago, okay, involving 4-year-old kids. Now, I have a 5-year-old son at home. His name is Mikey. Many of you know who he is. Okay, so I kind of understand the 5-year-old, 4-year-old mentality. Some of you may have actually heard this case study. It's called the marshmallow test. Has anybody ever heard the marshmallow test? Probably some of my older kids, maybe some of you guys. Okay, this is a very interesting test. This is what they did. They found a few handfuls of these 4 or 5-year-olds, just randomly picked, and they brought them to this center, and they had this room set apart. And it was a room that was very nondescript, didn't have anything on the walls, kind of just like a white wall room. It had a table in the center and 2 chairs, right? And in the back of the white wall room, like that mirror thing back there, they had one of those funky, like, interrogation police, where they can see you, but you can't see them kind of thing. So they had all the investigators were behind this the wall in this room, and they had the kids come in one by one. The investigator would take the kid in by the hand, and they'd sit him down in a chair. The investigator would sit across from him in the other chair, and right in between them on a table was a plate with 1 marshmallow on it. Okay, and the examiner, the investigator said, "Listen, little Johnny, here's the deal. I'm going to get up and go, but I'm going to come back. Now, when I leave, you can eat that marshmallow if you want. But I promise you, upon my return, if the marshmallow's still there, I'll give you 2. You understand what I want, little Johnny? Wait. I have to wait for that? And he got it, okay? And then the investigator got up and left. I forget if they told him how long. Kids don't have the longest attention span to begin with, so I'm sure it wasn't very long. But as you guess, you can imagine some of them just, as soon as barely before the doors shut, kid stuck his hand out, ate that thing, ate it up real quick. Delicious. But some of the kids, okay, they did the opposite thing. When the investigator left, the door shut, they would get up, they'd be walking around, distracting themselves, playing the drums, just don't look at the marshmallow type thing, and they'd be trying to deny themselves. And sure enough, it wasn't a long time. Investigator would come back and say, "Oh, good little Johnny, you're able to do it. Here's the second one." He says, for an interesting test, but what they did, these same investigators followed these 4-year-olds through college. And they found that those who, it's called immediate gratification, those who stick their hand out and grab it and eat it down, that's immediately gratifying themselves. Kind of like Esau of old. He comes in from the hunt. He didn't kill anything. He sees his brothers making a red stew. And he's like, "Listen, give me some food. I'm perishing from hunger." His brother says, "Give me the birthright." He's like, "Really? Okay, I'm going to die anyway." That's stupid. Okay, that's extreme stupid. That's an extreme version of the marshmallow test. Here's a guy who cannot deny his urges. He must, if the gratification is in front of him, he's going to gratify it. The other group of kids were what we call the long-term gratification. They knew if they could wait, they didn't know how long, but they knew if they could wait, that ultimately they would get a double reward. And they followed these 2 groups of kids. And by and large, the ones that were able to delay gratification had a much more well-rounded, robust life in the sense that they were able to go to college, have the career, better careers, and more happy in their careers, more happy in their relationships. And we know that because when you gratify the flesh immediately, it's never a good thing. If you can deny yourself, let's get real here. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about, okay, that's an old song. Anyway, but listen, the Bible says we delay this. The Bible says, your culture says you're crazy. They'll look at you crazy for saying, "Listen, I want to keep myself from my wife and my God, or my husband and my God." Your culture says, "No way. I mean, beautiful girl." That's the reality. This hits us all the time. The Bible is all about long-term rewards. That's what the Bible's about. In fact, Jesus says, don't lay up treasure for yourselves here, but lay it up for yourselves in heaven, where neither moth nor rust and all that stuff, right? Sorry, I got distracted there. Tell me when that thing goes off, will you? Thank you. Destroy. Okay? There you go. Okay? Jesus is saying, listen, ultimately our reward is not this side of eternity, it's that side. We are all about the long term in this. Now, I tell you that story to tell you the curious case of these 2.5 tribes. Okay? And you'll see the information and you'll have some of the points up here. Write these points down, okay? Number one, there's 3 C's that I want to talk to you about this afternoon concerning these 2.5 tribes. They're an interesting case. The first C is the compromise. C number 1 is what I call the compromise. And if you're taking notes, which you should be, you should write next to it, you should put Numbers 32, which is really where the heart of the story is, and then Deuteronomy 3. We're not going to flip there. I'm kind of going to give you the Cliff Notes version of what happens. Okay, go home and read it later. This is what happens, okay? This is toward the end of Numbers. The people of the land, they are literally on the west side of the Jordan. If you divide Jordan down to east and west, you have the west side of the Jordan River is where they are. The east side of the Jordan River, they're going to cross over in Joshua 3. Okay? They're going to come over in Joshua 3 to the east side. We all know what happens then, but they're on the west side. In fact, they just got done fighting 2 well-known kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, and this guy named Og, king of Bashan. You say, that's a weird name. You would never make fun of the dude. He was like 13 feet tall. The Bible specifically says that he was the last of the descendants of what the biblical race of giants called the Rephaim. This dude was a beast. I think they found his bed. It was like 20 feet long. Could you imagine a 20-foot bed? This guy was huge, and he wasn't just like Jack and the Beanstalk type huge. He was huge and muscular. This guy was fierce. And under the leadership of Moses, now the land, the west side, James, the west side of the Jordan, the land is called the land of Gilead. This is where Og and Bashan, and as I've said, the giants always occupied the best places of the land. So this was a good land. You can imagine under the leadership of Moses, the people were able to dispossess this beast of a king and take over his land. And they did so. And Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh looked around and they're going, this place is awesome. What a cool looking marshmallow. They looked around and they said, wow, rolling hills. They said, this is good. They were shepherds and they saw all these grass-laden rolling hills, and then they saw these cities which were well fortified, and they were like, our wives, our kids can live in the cities, which is well protected, and we're shepherds. We can go out. We have all this space. We're going to be rich. And they said, we want it. Nice looking marshmallow. And they went, what'd they do? They went to Moses and Moses, here's the deal. Listen, we don't want to cross over the Jordan. We want our possession on this side. Moses is upset. Moses thinks that they're failing again at belief. He thinks that they're afraid to actually go over with their brethren and take over the land, that maybe they got freaked out. Og and Bashan was a little bit too much, even though they killed him. Who knows? But they're like, he almost rips his clothes. He's so upset. He says, no, do not make your brethren stumble. You promised. And they said, no, Moses. That's not the deal. We will send our mighty men over. Okay? All tens of thousands of our mighty men will go over and they will fight with the children of Israel. The only thing is that we want this side of the Jordan. We want this land. In others, they were saying, listen, we are that close from the center of God's will, and they fall short. Write this in your notes. Good enough is the worst enemy of the very best. Good enough is the worst enemy of the very best. Satan in your lifetime will tempt you with the good enough. They are inches away from the promised land, guys. But before they really go in and see what God has blessed them, called them to, before they really entered into the perfect center of God's will, they saw this land. It was that close to God's center of God's will, God's promised land, and said, we want this. And they scarfed that marshmallow up. Moses thought they were failing again at faith. This is not a compromise of faith. This is a compromise of community. That's what I mean by the community up there. They fell short, just short of God, the center of God's will. failing the marshmallow test, if you will, but it's not a failure of belief, it's a failure of community. I want to talk to you a little bit about community today. But before we do so, let's see what happens to these guys, okay? Number 2, the conflict. Okay, write down number 2. The second C is the conflict. Again, I have a reference of Joshua 22. Believe it or not, by the end of the year, we will get there. Joshua 22 is listed up there. Now, again, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of what's happening in this story. By the time Joshua 22 comes on the scene, it's the end of the book of Joshua, and true to their word, Reuben, Gad, the half-tribe of Manasseh have sent their fighting men over, and they've spent a campaign. Now, people, listen, there's 24 chapters in the book of Joshua. You could read it in 24 days, and a lot of people think, well, if I can read it in 24 days, it happened in 24 days. It actually took 7.5 years. This was a long military campaign and conquest. And it's the end of 7.5 years. The military backbone of the land has been broken. The people have moved into their individual inheritances. And Joshua shows up and he says, listen, Reuben, Gad, half-tribe Manasseh, you 2.5 guys, thank you so much for your service. You've honored your word. You've now allowed your brethren to enjoy their possession. It's now time for you to go home. So they part ways and they head back. The Bible specifically tells us in Joshua 22, they head back to the valley of the Jordan. Okay? But before they go over, they do something curious. They build this beautiful, huge, eye-catching, no way you're going to miss this type of altar. This huge thing. Eye-catching. And then they head over, and it's only a matter of time before the other 9.5 tribes that are right in the rightful promised land, they catch wind of it, and they're like, I can't believe these 2.5 tribes have fallen away already. They've barely been away from us for just a few hours, and they've already built an altar to pagan worship. So they're about to go to civil war. They're getting their fighting men, and these are people that have bonded together in war, and they're about to face each other because 9.5 tribes are making a conclusion that is an error. And thankfully, they send a delegation of war to these 2.5 tribes, and they say, what are you doing? Why are you building an altar? You know the altar only exists outside the tabernacle. You can't build an altar. They said, no, if we built an altar, we're not going to do any sacrifices on it. And they specifically says it built an altar. They actually called the altar Witness. Why? They built it on the east side of the Jordan, where the 9.5 rightful tribes have their rightful promised land. They built it on their side, and it was a witness to those 9.5 guys that we are part of you. Don't you ever forget it. We won't forget, but maybe your kids will. And we want you to always remember that. Now, it's interesting because when we look at Joshua 4, when they pass through the river, Joshua commands the guys to go back in and grab a rock from the river, and they set up something called a memorial. This is similar to what these guys are doing. My question, I want you to grapple with this for a second. Why do you think they did this? Why? Yeah.
Because they kind of disown them, and they're kind of dead to them.
Okay, they haven't really disowned them yet. In fact, I would say on some level the opposite is true. There's a special, how many of you have seen the Stephen Covey, not Covey, but the Band of Brothers? It's an HBO series. It's an excellent series, okay? It's kind of like Saving Private Ryan. It gets violent at times. It's a great series. Okay, the guy who wrote the book actually inspired Tom Brokaw to write The Greatest Generation. And the series follows this army group called Easy Company. These were paratroopers. They jumped into battle. Real true story. In fact, the last of the Easy Company just died not too long ago. And you watch this movie, and it's called Band of Brothers. The book and the movie based on the book was called Band of Brothers, and it's fitting because there's something about battle that bonds people, especially men, together. See, men, we relate to one another side by side. Girls will look each other in the face and talk for hours over coffee. A guy will watch a football game for 3 hours, grunt 3 times, say 2 words, and we've bonded. It's weird. But when guys go together in battle and mission, and they say, listen, I'm putting my life in your hands, and you say, I'm putting my life back in your hands, there's a huge bonding that happens. In addition to that, these 7.5 years are some of the most amazing time where Jesus Christ in history has come alive and fighting for a group of people. Amazing things happen. I remember I've been led by the Lord individually all my life, as long as I can remember. But there's one time in particular that sticks out to me when a whole group of us were led. And that was the first time that Joey Rozek, who's now in England, took a trip. I was a youth leader on that trip, and I took the kids over. And there was this one day where God just said, I'm disrupting everything you're going to do, and I'm going to pour my spirit out. And every part of that whole thing wasn't just me being anointed or directed. It was the entire group. I'll tell you that story some other time. It was awesome. It ends with a Pentecost experience for Joey Rozek and a few of the kids. And Joey Rozek is in England now because of what God revealed in that Pentecost. Really wild. But it's great to be led as a group. I can only imagine that these guys who've placed their lives in each other's hands, they're bonding together, but they've seen God coming alive. In Joshua 10, I believe, at the end of it, the Israeli army comes down this hill. When they get down to the bottom of the hill, the Canaanites come down. God literally starts sending meteors on the hill. Okay? I would take out a blanket, I'd sit down, take out a hoagie, look, and be like, this is the single greatest fireworks show in history because people are literally being picked off by meteors, your enemy. God came alive in an amazingly brilliant way. Amazing. And there's something bonding about that. But I want to challenge you with this thought. It's right here. They set up an altar of witness, and the thought is in red up there. Does the Jordan part for these 2.5 tribes on the way out? So you'll remember Joshua 3, on the way in, God does his first miracle. He holds the water. The Bible says that God held the water as a heap all the way 19 miles upstream at a town called Adam. God was literally like, stop water. And literally, as the priests with the Ark of the Covenant, most precious relic in their religion, stepped into the water, as they stepped in, the water receded, just like this. In other words, God does this miraculous thing of entry. He does this amazing miracle. Now, the 2.5 tribes are leading. Now, this is a conjecture on my part, but I think it's supported by Scripture. These 2.5 tribes, they get to the Jordan River. They probably go to the exact same spot. I don't think anything happened. Now, I want you to think that through logically. What's your conclusion if you're part of these 2.5 tribes that on the way in, God parts the Jordan? On the way out, boys, where are our engineers? Because we need a bridge or some boats. Just think about that logically. You're part of this group going, am I stepping out of the center of God's perfect will? You just saw 7.5 years of dynamic ministry. You left behind brothers that you'll never forget. Am I stepping out? I've seen God come alive. I've seen and known great community. Am I stepping out of God's perfect will? And in light of that, they build an altar. To remind them. Now, we've looked at the compromise. Really, it's a compromise community. We're going to talk about that at the end. We've looked at the conflict. The third C about this story is the consequence. And you'll find their consequence. I want somebody to flip to what the Bible calls their consequence in 1 Chronicles 5, 25 and 26. What is the end of this people? What is the end of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh? Somebody flip, please, to 1 Chronicles 25 and 26. Read nice and loudly.
1 Chronicles 5, 25.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, nice and loud. This is the end.
And they were unfaithful to the God of their fathers and played the harlot after the gods of the peoples of the land, whom God had destroyed before them. So the God of Israel stirred up the spirit of Pul, king of Assyria, that is,
Tiglath-Pileser.
king of Assyria. He carried the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh into captivity.
Very good. Thank you. So what happens at the end? Okay. The end of these people is that eventually the king of Assyria, a guy named Tiglath-Pileser, he stirred up. Yeah, you want to make fun of his name, believe me. The Assyrians used to put fish hooks in people's, and then they put like reins in a horse. They used to lead the people out. They were a pretty nasty group of people. Well, he came in, and the first group of people to be absorbed and taken out were Reuben, Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh. We're going to talk about community now. Listen, what happens to this group of people is complete cultural conformity. They are utterly assimilated. They are never heard from again. They will never have a national identity. They're never heard from again. The ultimate end for these people, and they knew by setting up that altar, they suspected that ultimately maybe this isn't going to go well, and ultimately it doesn't go well. Ultimately, these people are assimilated. God has designed culture to be a very powerful thing. He's designed community to be very powerful. The Bible says that we are created for community with one another. Jesus Christ himself exists with the other two members of the Trinity. It is a picture of eternal relationship. We are created in the image of God. We are created for community. And because we're created for community, community has extremely powerful conforming and assimilating effects on our lives. Eventually, these people being outside the perfect center of God's will, outside the community of God's people, they eventually took over the practices of their new and own community, which is to worship the Baals. And God said, no more. They never retained an identity again. So last few minutes of this message, I want to take you through some of the challenges to our own community. The first one I call the wallet and the marshmallow. I'm excited that you guys are here. I'm not sure. I know I sat down with Peyton last year and he said he really wants to return to this school. It was a choice initiated by him. I'm sure a lot of you, I hope the vast majority of you here because you want to be in a Christian community under the word and lordship of Jesus Christ. Maybe not all of you, but the fact that you're there, you've chosen community. It's an important thing. In light of what we just saw, being created in the image of God, created for relationship, the people that you associate with have a huge impact. I've told you this before, but psychologists have done studies. Okay, you look at a pair of people that have been married 50 plus years, they're 80 years old, they confuse whose, dentures are in their mouths kind of thing, that's how old they are. But because they live with them forever, okay, I've lived with my wife for 7 years, okay? And when she has certain mannerisms, certain ways of holding it, certain facial expressions, and when we're talking, I kind of mimic it. You do the same thing with your friends. You do that for thousands of times over 50 years, and all of a sudden your wrinkles start to match her wrinkles, and you actually begin to look like your spouse. Physically. You do this all the time. My catchphrase in high school was cry me a river. I was proud of it. Somebody was whining, I'd be like, cry me a river. Okay? It was only a matter of time before all my friends picked it up and like, cry me a river. I'm like, you can't use that without giving me some credit, You'll all do it now too. Okay? You could go around right now. Some of you have been in community with one another for a while. You could say, what's Elena's, mannerisms? You could all answer, what's Hannah? How does Hannah hold herself? Listen, we got Nate down. Nate, you've been here for a little bit. We're getting you down, man. You all do it. We're created for community. It has an unbelievably powerful effect. And what I mean by the wallet up there, okay, these guys, the lessons that we can take, the first lesson we can take out of these guys is they chose for their wallet as opposed to the community of Jesus Christ. And you will be tempted time and time again. Juniors, you're 1 year away from applying to college. Julianne's looking at me like I'm crazy. You will be applying to college at this time next year. Okay? What is going to determine your decision? Kenny's a 6-stud soccer player. Maybe he'll get some money. Maybe the school will be a secular school and say, listen, we'll give you a full ride. And maybe the school has the exact major that he's looking for. So many people gobble that up, and they don't even stop to say, is there a dynamic Christian group on campus? Is there a church near there? Do you know how many people make decisions based on their wallet and not on the community of Jesus Christ? Let the lesson of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh teach you. It's easy to be assimilated into that, gentlemen. The second thing, and I think this hits home right now, it's the marshmallow test. Satan's going to put his second best in front of you often. We need to become people that know how to delay immediate gratification. We need to be people that know, like, listen, I have a vision. Listen, one of the things that kept me sober, and I'll put it in air quotes because it's important. I'm playing on words there. I drank a little too much in college. One of the things that kept me from drinking a lot was the fact that I wanted to go to medical school. The Bible says, without vision, the people cast off restraint. That vision of medical school kept me sober. If I didn't have that vision, I just, and a lot of people go to college without it. Oh, I'm going to be a communications major, and if I rub 3 brain cells together, I'll pass. So what are you going to do with the rest of them? I'm going to kill them with alcohol. You think I'm kidding? I thank God. Listen, I'm not working in a hospital today. News alert. Okay? But I thank God for that vision because it kept me grounded. I had to deny the immediate for the long term. I was sexually pure the day I got married. I was 31 years old when I got married. I was president of my fraternity. I wasn't, some weird dork church kid. Not that any of you guys are. That was the biggest. Listen, shh. That's going to be edited. That was the biggest challenge. Look at me. Listen, shh. That was the biggest challenge of my life. It's the purity. But it was also one of the clearest ways that I show into a very dark world, including a dark fraternity, that I was different. That's delaying gratification. Second thing I want you to talk about is disconnected devotion. I was walking in the mall the other day, okay, and this woman was in front of me, and she was doing one of these. And I was like, this is not going to end well. She's coming, she's not looking, she's not paying attention at all. She's just kind of looking down at her thing, and she's walking to me, I'm walking toward her, and I'm like, she's going to hit me. But she used some sort of weird sixth sense. The Force was great with that one because she was just like, without looking up, she moved out of the way. And I was like, it was like the woman sensed my aura or something. It was weird. And then I just thought, look at our society. That woman didn't even look up. I promise you, she did not look up. She just knew, I was there. And she didn't even look up to say, how are you? Nothing. It was just continued. She didn't do a spin or anything. That would have been weird. Okay. But she actually kind of just quick, very discreetly moved out of the way. Listen, shh. How many of you have fallen into this excuse Sunday morning? Listen, your teenagers, you're up a little too late. Saturday night, the next morning comes and it's, Mom, I'll just listen to church. I'll watch church online. What's even your attitude toward church? God has designed us. Listen, we are going to assimilate. We are going to become like the community that we choose to be part of. What's your attitude toward church, toward youth group? Listen, you may say, I don't really want to go. I'm tired. It's Friday night. It's Sunday morning. Do it. Do it. Even if you don't want to do it because there's a power that comes from community. There's a staying power and a keeping power that comes from community. This is my last point, okay? I call it the chaplain's challenge, okay? Just because I like my C's, apparently, today. Actually, C's is one of my favorite ones. Okay, weave yourself in. Well, true, but I couldn't think of a C word. What do I mean by this? Look at this picture. This is a tapestry. This is a tapestry.
Wow, that's good.
Okay? Anybody know what a tapestry is? What's a tapestry, Jeffrey? Or Gerbert?
Kind of like you would sew it and it would be like a painting, but it's with needles and threads.
That's right. A tapestry, guys, listen, is like a painting, but as opposed to using paint and brush, you're using thread and you're weaving it in. So in this picture here, you have all different kinds of colors of threads. Okay? And whoever did this masterfully put it all together. So let's take Cody here. Stand up, Cody. We're going to call Cody a red thread. Okay? And then we have Jastrzemski here. Jastrzemski's going to be an off-color blue thread. Okay? And then we're going to take, and then Jeffrey. And he's yellow and he's orange. And we're going to embed you. Listen, we're gonna weave you guys up. I want you guys to get so caught up in each other, right? Not awkwardly, okay? But just kind of wrap wrap legs, you know, okay? Weave it up, weave it up. Okay? This is the visual. Stay there and please don't fall over. Okay? This is the visual. Listen, up here. This is the visual that I want you to see when it comes to Christian community.
Oh God, I'm falling.
Okay? That's such a great visual, isn't it? Because if Evan doesn't kind of support his weight, then Cody does fall. Okay? And then they hit my new iPad and I get upset.
Oh no.
Okay? You see how interwoven they are? Good. Sit down. Good job, boys. What's my point? Listen. Shh, shh. Guys, give me just 2-3 more minutes. Okay, it's important. I'm excited for you 11th graders because you're about to go on a retreat. When you go on a retreat, you bond and get closer than you ever will. Next year, go to the DR. Guys, shh. Okay? The more that you weave yourself in, the more that you look to your brothers and sisters here as more than just friends, but really accountability partners, people that can help you. With these guys interwoven, you know, if they don't shift weight, they're all going to fall over. The proper perspective of Christian community is that you are so interwoven with one another that one, there's support, there's accountability, but ultimately, like the picture shows, every one of those individual threads, when you look back at it, what do you see? You see a picture of Jesus Christ. That's such a great visual of what God is doing. When you are submitted to the Lord and His headship in your life, and you willfully share in your life. You know, girls know this much better than guys. We talked about how guys bond, right? They can watch a football movie 3 hours later, grunt 3 times, say 2 words, and we've bonded. Girls, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's like, let's talk about who you like. Let's get really deep here. That's when it comes out. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You don't invite, listen, you don't invite just anybody into that. You invite people you trust. Guys, here's my challenge. The people sitting next to you, they're your church and your school community. But listen, is that you would take advantage of that. Look at the guys next to you, the girl next to you. You should know them. You should have a relationship. They should trust you enough to put their lives in your hands, and then you reciprocate it by putting your lives in theirs. Maybe not physically. We're not going to battle anytime soon. But I mean emotionally. Are you sharing with people the struggles that you have? And honestly, listen, even the pettiness that goes on, and I know it goes on, every grade has their pettiness. You know, there's a hierarchy with the boys, and then there's the drama with the girls. You know, that's not of the Lord. Satan is the one who sows discord among the brethren. Don't miss out on the tapestry that can be when you're submitted to the Lord, embedded and interwoven into each other, when there's accountability and trust and transparency. When people look at that, and I see it year after year in the DR, when people look at a bunch of people that are under the lordship of Jesus Christ, no one striving with anybody else, just going with the flow, people see that. They don't see the individual thread, they see Jesus Christ. And that, as a community, could be the best thing you ever offer people. You guys have been a blessing. God bless you.